The Man Who Lived Forever by John Borneman. When he turned 20, Jack Beery decided he was going to live forever, and that his drinking partner, fellow birthday celebrator, and lifelong friend Buddy Kunkel would help him accomplish that goal. "Of course, Buddy, you are free to live forever as well," Jack added with a smile, lowering a mug of something dark, amber, and alcoholic. Buddy grimaced, took a sip from his own mug, and waited to hear the next step in his insatiable friend's latest idea. "Buddy," Jack said, "we both know that you are the brains of this outfit." Which was a half-truth. Jack was majoring in business, and he had already paid for his and Buddy's college education through creative investing and a couple deals that Buddy preferred to politely ignore. "And, being the brains of this outfit," he continued, "you need to pursue a course of study that will allow us to live forever." He threw an open magazine onto Buddy's desk. The magazine, well read and wrinkled, landed on top of Buddy's physics homework. A yellow highlighted headline read, "Rainforest may supply herbal medicines that retard aging process." "Sorry, Buddy, physics won't do. You could learn to fling us into space and do that whole relativistic thing, but that wouldn't be living forever, now would it?" Jack watched as Buddy mused over the articles. "Nope, chemistry it is, and biology. After school, we head out for the Amazon." On their 25th birthday, the two left for the Amazon rainforest. Jack with several business degrees and several $1 million safely tucked away in a cross-section of investments. Buddy with diplomas proclaiming his doctorates in biology and chemistry tucked away in his suitcase. Buddy used Jack's money to fund research teams to penetrate the jungles. He and Jack swung through the rainforest canopy on metal cables, gathering samples and observing wildlife. They collected 76 new species of orchid, 21 unknown variants of funguses, and data on every member of every tribe along the Xingu River. And when Buddy retreated into his laboratory to classify, experiment, and develop age-defying substances, Jack headed back into civilization. Jack began leveraging his money and energy into promoting the preservation of the rainforests. He figured it'd be worthless to discover the key to living forever, only to have the source of that key chopped down and burned for farmland. Jack discovered that these jungles were being cleared to create jobs. Unlike his predecessors, however, Jack realized that simply looking sad and holding up dispossessed monkeys wouldn't solve the problem. The people of the river basin needed income that would promote the rainforest rather than destroy it. He lobbied governments and businesses, bribed warlords and drug cartels, and finally established an intricate system of jungle-friendly businesses that immediately began to increase the wealth of the whole river basin. 11 years and countless hours of in situ and laboratory experiments later, Buddy met Jack during the height of Carnival in the one and only quiet bar in all of Salvador de Bahia. They both held mugs of dark amber alcoholic liquid in front of them. "Buddy, we've done a great job down here," he waved expansively around the bar, but meaning with South America in general. Buddy frowned into his drink, and his eyes watered with emotion. "Maybe, Jack. I feel like I've failed. I haven't been able to find a cure for death." Jack pounded his mug down on the table. Beer splashed over him and onto the floor. "Failed? Are you kidding? We've perched high in the Canopita rainforest and studied monkey communities. We've discovered new plants, talked to a tribe of natives who had never seen anyone from the outside world until we walked into their village." Jack waved his mug through the air, anointing several tables and their sleepy-eyed patrons. You developed a cure for that weird type of cancer and created a drug that knits broken bones in less than a day. Along the way, between my money and your science, we've helped to delay the end of the rainforest." "No, Buddy. We've done very well." Jack and Buddy both paused and looked around the bar. Outside they could hear laughter and the muffled music of the Trio Electricos. The pounding and rhythm of thousands of dancing feet rose up through the floorboards. "Besides, the answer's not here anyway." Jack tossed a vid print onto the beer-soaked table, knocking it into the side of Buddy's mug. "We've been looking on the wrong planet." Buddy picked it up and read, "Scientists find 1,000-year-old microbes in Martian soils." He looked up at his friend and grinned. Jack smiled and threw back the rest of his drink. "I've managed to add a few shekels to our net worth while we've been down here. As of about 4 hours ago, we now own the largest privately held spaceship development foundation in the world. We leave for Mars in 12 months. It turned out to be 24 months. On Jack and Buddy's 38th birthday, a ship roared up from an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean heading for Mars. The ship and the island were both owned by Jack. Buddy had designed the scientific equipment and interior design of the ship. Part of the delay had come from Buddy deciding he needed to cram his way through a doctorate in geology. The other part of the delay came from Jack coercing the International Space Foundation into allowing him to set up a domed operation on Mars near the ISF's existing research station. Jack and Buddy plunged into their new task. Over the course of several years, Jack's company had launched ship after ship towards Mars, bringing building materials, scientists, construction experts, doctors, and life support specialists. Jack also convinced Marcos Franco, an old friend of theirs from the jungles of Brazil, to join them and set up the first Martian hub. For years, Jack and Buddy hiked and drove over large sections of Martian desert, categorizing microbes, uncovering mineral deposits, and delving into the geologic history of Mars. While drilling at the North Pole for deep living microbes, they brought up a plug of ice. 2 years later, Jack was supplying water, oxygen, and hydrogen to the 20 cities and research facilities now on Mars. Buddy discovered a Martian microbe which, when ingested by a test rat, caused the rat's metabolism to shut down almost entirely. And ISF scientists on Mars and on Earth used Buddy's microbe to develop suspended animation for humans. 5 years later, the first manned spaceship set out for the stars. And on their 56th birthday, Jack and Buddy found themselves in Marky's place, a dark amber-colored liquid in their hands, watching Marky polish glass mugs behind the bar, while tourists trickled in and out, sampling the finest beer on Mars. "Jack," Buddy said, "we failed again. I thought I had the answer with that little microbe. But who wants to live forever while asleep?" Jack finished Buddy's sentence. "Besides, Buddy, we've—" "No, Jack," Buddy interrupted. Jack took a pull on his mug and waited. "I don't want to hear how we haven't failed, how we brought water to Mars, how we made interstellar space travel possible, how we developed a political infrastructure that has promoted the colonization of a new planet." He wiped the foam off his mouth. "Are you done, Buddy?" Jack smiled and swirled the fluid in his mug while keeping an eye on his friend. Buddy nodded and downed the last of his drink. "Good. And we have done good work here. But we've been looking in the wrong place again." Jack tossed a memory flake onto the dark faux wood table, narrowly missing a creeping pool of beer. Buddy grimaced, picked up the flake, and inserted it into his viewer. "Please tell me we're not going to Pluto?" Jack waited while Buddy read. "Taoist monks discover famous elixir of immortality?" Buddy flipped off the viewer and sighed. 2 weeks later, they found themselves in the rebuilt Qisong Temple, perched on the side of Mount Jinhua, China. After a generous donation to the temple, Qi Chupi, the self-proclaimed spiritual reincarnation of the famous Chinese Taoist priest Huang the Immortal, invited them to remain and study. Jack and Buddy threw themselves into their spiritual search with the same vigor as they'd always applied to their physical searches. Qi Chupi claimed that by achieving true inner vision through complicated meditation techniques coupled with daily doses of a drink made from rosin and Poria caucus, he felt certain that one would cease to die. On their 68th birthday, in the cold stone of the temple, both men sat cross-legged in front of each other, holding tiny cups of foul-tasting dark amber liquid in their hands. Buddy's knees ached from hours of meditation while sitting on stone. And although Jack would never admit it, Buddy knew that his friend's ankles and hips were stiff. Jack raised the tiny cup into the air. "To Qi Chupi, may he find in death that which he failed to find in life." Jack sipped the drink and grimaced at the taste. "To Qi Chupi," Buddy replied, raising his cup but not sipping the drink. "Well, Jack, another dead end." He winced at the bad pun. "And we don't even have the consolation of helping humanity to console us." Jack smiled back at Buddy. He set the cup down and patted Buddy on the arm. "Don't worry, Buddy. I figured this day might come." He tossed a news button onto the floor between them. Buddy stared at it, but didn't pick it up. A cold mountain breeze popped into the open window, and both men shivered. Buddy toyed with the cup, spinning it around in his hands, never meeting Jack's eyes. I'm sorry, Jack. I can't. He set the cup down, and using one extended finger, he gently pushed the tiny news button back over toward Jack. I'm tired, Jack. We're old. We've failed. No, I failed. I just want to stop. Jack's whole body shrank, but he picked up the button off the floor and after a struggle stood up. But buddy, this is it. I feel it in my bones. There's this scientist just back from, Jack waved his hand up toward the sky, out there. His discoveries are shattering. We can travel to the stars, visit new planets. Stop! Buddy stared up at his old friend and pushed himself up off the floor, ignoring the pain that shot through his knees. Face to face, he continued, just stop, Jack. This obsession of yours is a dream. It's Shangri-La in perpetual motion and the cure for the common cold all wrapped up into one. It's myth. It's vapor. It's dead. The dream is dead, Jack, just like we will be. Just like you will be. Buddy felt his breath coming with more difficulty. He took a step towards his lifelong friend. Let's stop, Jack. We can buy a little place in some remote part of the world, and for once we can just be. Jack stared at Buddy. His fists clenched and unclenched. Buddy stood very still, slightly swaying with the gusts of wind from outside. Jack turned and walked out the door. And on their 75th birthday, exactly 7 years after he and Jack parted company, Buddy Kunkel raised his eye up from the viewer of his quantum microscope and smiled. 3 hours later, and 2 continents away, he found himself standing at the front door to Jack's home, a restored 15th century Scottish castle. Buddy hesitated. He had not spoken to Jack since that day in China. His computers had been keeping track of his old friend's progress for years, and Buddy knew he was still alive, though he didn't know much more than that. Over the past 6 years, Buddy had read about Jack, his old companion, and thrown himself into countless schemes and business ventures, all designed to find the answer to his obsession. Last year, Buddy heard that Jack had finally retired, and he now lived here in this remote part of the Scottish Highlands and refused contact with anyone. Buddy smiled to himself and fingered the tiny vial inside his right-hand coat pocket. He moved his cane under his arm, lifted the iron knocker, and pounded on the oak door. Several echoes later, it opened, revealing the tiny and now very wrinkled face of Marcos Franco. Marky! Buddy grabbed his cane and shuffled inside. He grasped the little man's hand. What are you doing here? Marky Franco allowed himself only a hint of a smile. Jack asked me to come back to Earth and help him out. He's expecting you. I will take you to him. Buddy frowned, but followed Marky as he disappeared behind a far door. Hello, Buddy. Jack lay immersed in a giant bed. Stacks of blankets hid him almost completely. Only his face and the fingertips of each hand were uncovered. Buddy shivered and set his cane against the bed. Jack's face was almost as white as his pillowcase. Buddy choked and wiped a tear from his eye and forced himself to speak. You were not surprised by my visit. It appears that you have been keeping track of me, old friend. Jack grunted. His eyes closed part way, 2 tiny slits in a wrinkled and faded face. He fumbled with his blankets and finally pulled down the covers to his waist. He was dressed in a blue Chinese silk pajama. And you, me. Their eyes met and held. Buddy spoke next. I have a surprise for you, Jack. He patted his pockets with both hands, then reached into the right-hand one and pulled out the little glass vial. He held it up. The dark, amber liquid sparkled in the dim room light. I found it. His face broke into a smile, and he watched his friend for a reaction. Jack's face stayed still. His eyes never twitched. Despite what I said back in China, I found I couldn't stop searching. I spent the last few years going back over all our research. I compared everything I learned in the Amazon with our microbe research on Mars, with the analysis of that vile concoction of cheats or peas, and I found it. He held out the vial to Jack, but his friend didn't move. Buddy shuffled around to the side of the bed. He sat down on the edge and poured the dark brown contents into a water glass on the nightstand. He picked up the glass and moved it to Jack's lips. Jack opened his eyes and grabbed Buddy's arm in a grip that belied his condition. "No, Buddy, no." Buddy set the glass back down on the nightstand. He shifted on the edge of the bed and took his friend's hands in his. "Yes, Jack. You can live forever, just like you planned. This will work. It will restore your vigor. It will deny death, just like you've always dreamed." "I did it, Jack. I finally did it. Just like you asked me to." Jack's eyes opened, and he struggled to lift himself onto his elbows. "You don't understand." Buddy stared into the blue depths of those eyes. Reaching behind Jack, he helped support his old companion's shoulders. "You don't understand about living forever." Jack coughed, hacking up spots of dark blood. "While we were apart, I also discovered something. I now understand. I understand the truth about life and death." Jack collapsed back onto the mattress, his head sunk into the pillow, his eyes closed. His chest rose and fell, but slower and slower with each breath. Tears formed in Buddy's eyes. He kicked his shoes off onto the floor. Pulling back the thick covers, he slowly and gently slid in beside his old friend. Pushing his arm under Jack's head, he cradled him to his chest. Jack didn't stir, but Buddy could feel Jack's shoulders shaking with a subtle palsy. He laid there, absent-mindedly stroking Jack's arm. The cool touch of orchid blooms caressed his face. He heard the plaintive screeching of howler monkeys high above his head in the Xingu canopy. Far off he saw the vast red Martian plains with their stark white domes of new cities randomly scattered over a bleak landscape. The horrible scent of the Chi-Chu Peas elixir entered his nose, and through the bed springs, Buddy felt the thrumming of hundreds of acolytes as they chanted and searched for peace. Buddy smiled. He felt the single puff of breath on his neck. He waited, but he felt no more. He grabbed Jack in his arms and hugged him to his chest. He understood what Jack had been trying to say. Then Jack moved in his arms, and to Buddy's surprise, he spoke. "Buddy?" "Yes, Jack." "You really did it?" "Yes, Jack, I did it." Buddy squeezed Jack's shoulder. "But that's okay. I understand now. Let's just rest." Jack struggled, lifting himself up far enough to peek over Buddy's chest at the glass of amber fluid sitting on the nightstand. "Well, maybe a small sip wouldn't hurt."